Back to your favorite intermediate algebra course. Good to see you today. We're going to talk about inverse and joint variation. So if you remember, direct variation is anything of the form y equals kx, is how x and y would, their relationship is. They vary directly, okay? And k is just some constant. It cannot be zero. So for example, y equals 3x. So this is just like a slope-intercept formula, except your y-intercept is 0, okay? It cannot have a y-intercept other than 0. So y equals 3x is an example, y equals negative 10x, whatever your k is, it just cannot be 0. It's a constant, okay? Inverse variation, on the other hand, if they say, you know, y varies inversely with x, then y equals k over x, okay? So for example, and k again is a constant, y equals negative 2 over x is an inverse variation equation. And finally down here you got a joint variation. Now when you hear joint variation, just think of a direct variation equation, except you got more quantities than that. So my example here is L varies jointly with M, N, and O. L varies jointly with M, N, and O. And so you would write L varies jointly. So this is kind of like a direct variation, except you got more quantities here. Varies jointly with M, N, and O. So K, M, N, and O are all being multiplied, okay? They vary jointly. So you would just have some number in there for K. Maybe K is 13. So here's an example of them varying jointly, okay? So L equals K, M, N, O. So let's do some examples here. Let's look at this first one. Tell whether X and Y show direct variation, inverse variation, or neither. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Now remember, direct variation, you got to be like that, right? Inverse variation is going to have to look like that. And notice both of those you have to solve for y. So in part A here you say, well, let me solve for y. Y equals x minus 2. Y is already solved for. Does it look like either of those? No. All right, the problem here is you got a y-intercept, okay? So this is neither. Neither here, okay? Part B, 2 equals y over x. Well, we got to solve this thing for y first of all. So let's take that x to the other side. So 2 over x equals y. In other words, y equals 2 over x. So which one does that look like? Does it look like the direct variation, or does it look like the inverse variation? I say, well, of course, looks like the inverse variation with my k being 2. So, right, okay, this is inverse variation. Inverse variation on that one, okay? Part C, x equals y over 7. You got to be careful again here because you got to solve for y first. So let's get rid of that 7. Multiply both sides by 7. So 7x equals y equals 7x. And now you say, oh yeah, okay, that fits the old direct variation, doesn't it? So I say direct variation. That's all you got to write there. Of course, our k is 7 in that case. Okay, let's look down at this next one. The variables x and y vary inversely. Okay, as soon as you hear that, oh, x and y vary inversely, so you're going to write y equals k over x, right? They vary inversely. And y equals 2 when x equals 3. So for this part A, when you're doing part A, you say, I'm going to write an equation that relates x and y. So I know y equals 2 when x equals 3. So I'm going to plug those in and write an equation so I can solve for x here. Y equals 2 when x is 3. So let's solve for k. So the first thing we want to do is solve for k. So substitute x and y in, solve for k. So multiply both sides by 3 here. I guess 6 is my k, okay? So then we go to the side and we say, well, they vary inversely, and now I know that my k is 6, all right? So I just got to plug that in, 6 over x. And I say, there's my inverse variation equation. So I can find my y value whenever I know an x value, which is what they're going to ask me to do on this part B. So part B, they say, find y when x is negative 2. I say, well, I already got my inverse variation equation now because I already found my k. Okay, so I write it down. I say, well, my x here they give me is negative 2. Plug that in, 6 over negative 2. Y is negative 3 when my x was negative 2. okay, according to our inverse variation equation. Let's look at some more. Let's write some equations here for the given relationship. So if they say V varies directly with U, you would write V equals K. Whoops, I should write V. Said that wrong, wrote it. Said it right, wrote it wrong. V varies directly with U. V equals KU. How about V varies inversely with U? V equals K over U. They have inverse relationship there. Y varies jointly. Again, jointly, you're thinking of direct, right? Y varies jointly with T, U, and V. Y varies jointly with T, U, V. So W equals, I'm sorry, I said W varies jointly with T, U, V. W equals K times T times U times V. All right, V varies inversely. V varies inversely with who? The cube of U. So U cubed. V equals K over U cubed. Okay, so it varied inversely with this cube of U this time. W varies directly with U. W varies directly with U, yet inversely with V. So W equals KU over V. Okay? So that's some examples of writing some equations given the written relationship there. All right. So here's another one. Variable Z varies jointly with X and Y. So as soon as I hear that, Z varies jointly with X and Y. Okay, so I write the relationship. Use the given values to write an equation relating X, Y, and Z. Okay, so let's look at the given values. Here's the given values right there. So X equals negative 12, Y is 4, Z is 2. Let's plug those in. Z2, I don't know K, but I'm going to figure it out. X is negative 12, Y is 4. So we got 2 equals negative 48K. Now I go ahead and solve for K so I can have this joint relationship here. So K equals negative 2 over 48. So negative 1 over 24 if you reduce that. Okay, so now I say, well, now I know what my K is, and that's what I needed to write the actual equation, negative 1 over 24. So remember how Z equals K X Y, and I needed that K, which I just found. Okay, so here's my relationship. Okay, that's my relationship. Now let's go back up. It says, find Z now if you only know X and Y. X being negative 4, Y being 7. Okay, find the relationship. So X being negative 4 and Y being 7. So now, find Z, X is negative 4, Y being 7. Okay, so I have my relationship here, my joint relationship, and I go ahead and write it negative 1/24 XY, plug in my X, which is negative 4, plug in my Y, which is 7, go down a little bit, extend this a little bit. Okay, and I say, put these over 1, 24 and 4, let me make that into 6 right there. So I got positive 7 over 6. That's my Z. So I found my Z when I knew my X and my Y. Okay, so that's how you do a problem like that. We'll see you guys in class. Make sure you bring your questions.